I haven't got my glasses on this time.
I mean, hey, if you get your glasses on, then we're definitely ready to go.
Oh, definitely.
Because that's usually the first hurdle.
Are they even?
Oh, there was an attempt.
Oh crap!
All right, you wanna? You good?
Yep, I had to turn off YouTube.
Okay. Get some feedback.
Yeah. Okay. Did I hit the wrong button? Are we still good here?
Yep, we're still good.
Okay. Hurdle number 2 on the glasses is make sure they're clean.
Right. Yeah. No, that's. I can see like little pits and stuff, and I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna have to get that off, but I'll give it here just a 10 seconds or so, and then we'll kick it off.
Yay. Whoopee. Oh,
All
shoot.
right. So, this is our earlier version of Monday Night Coin Talk. The reason why we moved it up to before the coin Q&A is I have some stuff to do at work, which is going to happen tonight. So we're opting to run it a little bit earlier tonight, depending on where you are. So this is Monday Night Coin Talk, and this is part 2 of our Exonumia. And for those who haven't heard of Exonumia before, it is basically the collection of coin related items and like numismatic pieces that are not necessarily US minted coins. So there's a lot of different pieces that go into that. So last week we talked about some of the types of exonumia that you may come across being a coin collector, because it's really common to have to come across some of these things while you're collecting coins. So we talked about the elongated coins, so of where they come from, and basically the start, which was early 1892, 1893 at the World's Columbian Exposition, and the fact that you can find them in a lot of different areas. We talked about hobo nickels. Hobo nickels has a great history that really combines art and the actual coins for basically the early coin engravings that were done by hand. We talked about love tokens. So love tokens are generally smooth on one side, and they contain the initials in like a very, very ornate way. That also include it can include pictures and phrases and adorn with other things. We also talked about last week's sales tax tokens. This is by far the number one thing that comes across when people are coin collecting, is they will get some kind of tokens or medals and with their coins, and they will have a sales tax token. So we talked about the history of those in these 12 states that those were actually issued in, and just kind of the little history behind them. The last one that we talked about last week was the lucky penny. The lucky penny is one of those very common things that you come across that you generally see online and in coin shops. Flea markets, you'll probably see them, and basically it's going to have some kind of penny, whether it be an Indian head or Lincoln cent, that has some kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Some kind of adornment around it, usually struck out of aluminum. This could be for these clovers. This could be circles. This could be horseshoes. There's lots of different varieties of configurations for the lucky penny. So that being said, we are on part 2. So this was a topic that both Blue and I's really enjoy, because we really enjoy the history of the coins. What's up, Argent? John Argent in the house. And the some of the other things that you guys might come across while you're coin collecting. So the first one is counterfeit coins. So in this episode, we will be talking a little bit about the Henny nickel, the 1914 D Lincoln cent, and the most famous is the 1955 double die. We're going to talk about Mardi Gras doubloons. You're not necessarily going to come across these types of coins unless you're collecting metals and other stuff, because these are more sized in the so-called dollar range, closer to the the Morgan dollar size, but generally struck out of aluminum. Challenge coins. So a lot of people know what challenge coins, especially if you're former military, you definitely have heard about challenge coins, or probably have one or more challenge coins of yourself, or yeah, for yourself. We're going to talk about hard times tokens, and we're going to talk about Civil War tokens. So this is, like I said, this is part 2. So there is a lot going on in Exonumia, and like it is not just types of other types of coins. Like the Exonumia actually goes far beyond that. It goes into stuff that is even made out of plastic and cardboard and paper. Like it branches out to a lot of different areas, but a lot of it is tied into a lot of history, that also includes some of the historical events that have happened in the US and around the world. So naughty tokens. Yep.
Naughty tokens.
So the first one that we're going to talk about is counterfeit coins. So in the US, the most infamous counterfeit coins are the Henny nickel, 1914D, and 1955 double die. First off, the Henny nickel. If you don't know what that is, the Henny nickel is probably the most infamous nickel that you could have in terms of counterfeit coins. The Henny nickels is infamous for a few reasons. The main reason is the 1944 Philadelphia nickel, which during the war times, the metallic content was changed to save resources for the war effort. So from 1942 to 1945, the nickels contained 35% silver and had a very large mint mark above the Monticello, building on the reverse. This specific Henny nickel was a strong duplicate of the standard Jefferson nickel, with one exception. It was missing the mint mark over the Monticello building. And that is one of the number one ways that you could tell that it's a Henny nickel if it's dated 1944 and it's missing the mint mark. So Francis Leroy Henning was actually born in 1891 and began his counterfeiting career kind of early, by printing fake $5 bills. Obviously, the authorities caught up to him really quickly, and he was convicted, being sentenced to only 3 years in prison. Think about that. Counterfeiting $5 bills, and you only get 3 years in prison. Sounds like a kind of a cake job. By his release in 1939, Henning had already begun to plan his next scheme. His second attempt at counterfeiting focused on lower denomination coins to avoid the scrutiny that he faced when he was printing the $5 bills. So by 1953, he had rented a building in his hometown of Ariel, New Jersey, disguising his do-it-yourself coin press at the Child's Plastic Molded Products Company, which is a wild way to hide a business. I'm sorry, to hide an illegitimate business. While focusing mainly on nickels, Henning did produce dies for coins dated 1939, 1944, 1946, 1947, and 1953. Depending on the year, there are a few ways to tell if you have a Henning nickel. The 1944 will weigh heavy at 5.4 grams, when the standard is 5 grams, and will be missing the obvious large mint mark over the Monticello building. Another way to identify these counterfeits, apparently that's a hard word for me today, is the void or hole in the left leg of the R in pluribus. Some examples of the 1939 and 1944 have a late die state crack that stretches from the dome of the Monticello building up to the U.S. in pluribus. Henning had stated that it only took him 4 hours to make each die, which obviously is going to lead to poor quality dies and greater opportunity for defects. So that little void in the R, that is by far one of the easiest ways to tell if you have a Henny nickel, because it was very, very apparent if you're looking for it across many versions of the counterfeit coins that he had. To go into the story a little bit more, there was a couple of times where that his activity actually tipped off people, including people that worked at the bank, even under the guise of he was a coin operated machine tender and was collecting coins. One of those instances was that he had deposited $2.40 worth of nickels that were all the same date. That tipped off the teller, which, as it came out, like, he got caught. But that was one of the things that kind of tipped off on bits and pieces as he continued to produce these counterfeit coins. The 1914 D Lincoln cent, because of the smaller surviving population of the coins, it makes this one actually a really prime target for counterfeiters. And so I detailed some key points to look at when you're looking at these coins to make sure that it is either a legitimate 1914 or if it's possibly a counterfeit 1914. So number one thing is look for any unusual weak details. Some unusual weak details would be devices, whether it be letters, the date, liberty, around his bust, that are unusually weak. What this is a sign of is extreme wear on the dies or extreme wear on counterfeited dies created by using an actual coin. Compare the position and the shape of the mint mark to known examples. And if you don't know what actual examples are, you can actually go to pcgs.com/coinfax, and then you can actually look through the pictures that they have for the 1914 D Lincoln cent. Look for a large gap. I'm sorry. The other part is to make sure and verify the mint mark style. Many of the counterfeits that are created actually are using the incorrect mint mark style, and they generally use like a more modern or a newer version of the mint mark, of the Denver mint mark, than the one that was actually intended to be used with the 1914 D. If you guys don't know what those look like, you can actually go into Variety Vista, look into some of their varieties, and they will have a section that actually has the examples of all of the different mint marks and what service dates that they should be utilized on. So you can use that as a quick reference. Look for a large gap between the 9 and the 1 in the date. This is a common occurrence of a 1944 coin that has been altered to remove the edge of the first 4 to show up as a 1. This creates a large space between the 9 and the 1 as compared to the rest of the number spacing in the date. So generally, they should have the same spacing between the 1, the 9, the 1, and the 4. But if there's a large gap right in the middle, that could be an indication that is actually an altered die or an altered coin to reflect, to make it look like that it's a 1914 D Lincoln cent. And then our favorite, the 1955 double die. This Lincoln cent is the most iconic of the double dies, because and is often labeled as the king of the double dies, and is a prime example of a class 1 doubling with a rotated hub design causing significant overlapping design features. So the counterfeit 1955 double die will have an almost cartoonish appearance and coloring and will often reflect an off-center strike. That is, if that is not sign enough that it is clearly fake, then you can look on the reverse of it, and many versions of these fake ones will have the reverse of the 1909, which has VDB on the bottom. So if you see a 1955 double die that's off-centered with a 1909 reverse that shows VDB, that is 100% a fake, and you should stay far away from it.
Yeah.
Do you want me to keep going?
No, I could try to tackle the next one.
Okay, go for it.
And I say that word loosely because I've been having a lot of trouble with these lately. So, next on our list are the Mardi Gras doubloons. The Mardi Gras doubloons are throwaway coins that commemorate the various Mardi Gras crews. They are typically made of aluminum and are thrown from floats during carnival parades. The first doubloon used as throws from parades dates to the 1960s, and these early doubloons are very collectible. Yeah, I've seen some of the early ones, and they go for good money. The doubloon was first created in New Orleans by artist and entrepreneur H. Alvin Sharp in 1959. He had his own metal dice for striking the doubloons from aluminum blanks. He presented the design to Darwin Schaefer Shriver Finning? Finner. Yeah. And once again, words are hard.
Words are hard.
Yes. Who was also a captain of the crew of Rex, the leading Mardi Gras organizer at the time. As a result of this meeting, Shriver personally financed production of 3,000 doubloons for the 1960 Mardi Gras year. Although the crew of Rex produced 80,000 undated doubloons using Sharp's design, using a firm in Ohio. Sharp's design was larger but lighter than the U.S. silver dollar and a size similar to the Spanish doubloon, providing public appeal and giving raise to the name. The original design. I lost my place. There I am. The original design.
Depicted. Okay. This original design depicted a bust of Rex the King of Carnival on one side with the arms of the School of Design, which was the organization that stages the Rex Mardi Gras parade, on the opposite side. The undated design was intentional so that the doubloons could be used as throws for multiple years. In 1964, New Orleans businessman John Barr and Bill Cox founded the Barco Mint Company to locally produce the doubloons. In 1996, Barco Mint changed its name to the New Orleans Mint and currently produces the Mardi Gras doubloons in addition to commemorative doubloons for other purposes. By the late 1960s, the doubloons were common Mardi Gras throws with the design commonly with the crew's name and year on one side and on the back depicting the theme of that particular Mardi Gras crew that year. The common aluminum throws went through a period of significant overproduction, causing a pretty extreme limit to their value. But ones made of silver or cloisonné carry way more value than just the metal itself. So what was interesting about the Mardi Gras doubloons is I had seen these actually on eBay and stuff, and I didn't really know anything about them. So it wasn't until I started going through kind of the history on this that there is actually a lot more depth to those, way more than I actually knew about. So that was really interesting for me to learn. So hopefully you guys get a good understanding of that as well. So challenge coins. So there are quite a number of different stories that exist that base the originations of the challenge coin. But one thing is true across the board: the challenge coins are given to people belonging to a certain group of people, whether that be a military unit, or royalty, nobility, or other types of well-to-do people. In their earliest existence, challenge coins were known as portrait models or portrait medals during the Renaissance and were used to commemorate specific events. The medals would be given as gifts or rewards. The most common format for this was one side to depict the patron, while the other side showed something that represented that individual's family, house, lineage, and or seal. One of the oldest military challenge coins is known from the Vietnam War era with Colonel William Buffalo Bill Quinn, who had coins. The cross and fort icon represent the unit's heritage, which started in Cuba during the Civil War. Excuse me. The challenge coin tradition has spread to other military units in all branches of service and even to non military organizations, as well as the United States Congress, which produces challenge coins for members of Congress to give to their constituents. The tradition of a challenge was the most common way to ensure that members are carrying their unit's coins. The rules of a challenge are not formalized and vary between units or organizations, and they only apply to those members who have been formally given a coin. The act of challenging is called a coin check, which can be made at any time and begins with a challenger drawing their coin and slapping it down or placing it on a table. Everyone challenged must immediately produce their coin for their organization, and anyone failing to do so must buy a run of drinks for the challenger and everyone else who had produced their challenge coin. Most versions of the rules permit a challenged person a step and a reach to access their coin, or if an individual has an extra coin, to pass it off to the person closest to them. Variants also exist that portray if somebody is able to steal a challenge coin, everybody in the group must buy them a drink. During a challenge, everyone in the group must buy a drink for the holder of the highest ranking coin. Traditionally, rules of a challenge include a prohibition against defacing the coin, especially if it makes it easier to carry at all times. If the challenge coin is attached to a belt buckle or keyring, or has a hole drilled in it and it to attach to a lanyard, it no longer qualifies as a challenge coin. The use of challenge coins reaches outside the military as well. Organizations that have had challenge coins made include the New York City Police Department, motorcycle clubs, science companies like Varian Medical Systems, and the International Genetically Engineered Machine Competition, as well as multiple media, business, education, and labor unions. So, just for sake, this is actually a challenge coin that I made from a copper blank. So that's one we made. So this is one of the shops that I work at. So this is a challenge coin that we made and that I've had in my pocket ever since. Hard times tokens. So hard times tokens are large or half cent sized coins that were struck between 1833 and 1843, and served as unofficial currency. These were mainly privately made pieces compromising merchant, political, and even satirical pieces during a time of political and financial crisis in the US. In 1832, President Andrew Jackson ran for re-election and called for the abolition of the Second Bank of the United States. While he won election, he worked to weaken the bank before their charter expired in 1836. A circular that was issued on July 11th, 1836, stated that as of August 15th, banks and others who received money were required to accept only gold and silver coins in payment for public lands. So, in this term, a circular is something representative of basically like a newspaper of what we have today. This was an effort to halt the inflation in public lands. However, the results of the circular really spelled out the end of a time of economic prosperity and set into motion a panic, with the public beginning to hoard coinage. This was the beginning of the Panic of 1837 during Martin Van Buren's presidency, known as the Hard Times, hence why they're called Hard Times tokens. These Hard Times tokens have been broadly classified under these categories. The first category is political tokens, referring to the Second Bank of the United States controversy. Political tokens with satirical or other slogans and images. Tokens resembling large U.S. cents with liberty head, wreath, and eagle motifs, and legends similar to federal coins, and referencing something at like not 1 cent instead of being 1 cent on the reverse. Store cards or even advertising pieces, and then mules, which mules are obverse and reverse die combinations that wouldn't normally exist. So you could have, say, for example, the reverse that says not 1 cent, and you could actually have two different versions of that on both sides of the coin. That would be something that would be a mule. So these Hard Times tokens are cataloged. There we go. Cataloged are listed under Lyman H. Low or L numbers or HT numbers. I've seen both. Sometimes coins will be listed with an L number and an HT number. So there is a little bit of difference. So Russell Roulau expanded the Hard Times tokens catalog in 1891 based on the work from Lyman Low during his 1899 classic reference. So if you guys are looking for Hard Times tokens, and especially a book, a catalog on those coins, that's who you need to look for is Lyman Low or Russell Roulau. Either one of those will work for you guys to reference any of those other coins. So the next one is Civil War tokens. So Civil War tokens during the Civil War time frame of 1861 to 1864, the U.S. coinage became very scarce. People were hoarding all of the coins, regardless of the metal content, because they thought that it was going to be useful for commerce, regardless of what side won the war. So people had the thought that, hey, I'm gonna hold all these coins because depending on if the North won or the South won, then I could at least exchange these coins for goods and services based off the metal content, just in case. So conducting any type of business with merchants made it really difficult without coinage, and was more pronounced in Midwest and Northeast states with the businesses starting to issue privately minted tokens. So again, this is one of those things that the economy and what was going on really like basically forced people and companies and businesses to start making their own coinage, because there wasn't a lot of coinage out there to continue to conduct business. H.A. Ratterman was the first to start the practice of creating Civil War tokens in autumn of 1862 in Cincinnati, Ohio. followed by Gustavus Lindenmuller in New York in the spring of 1863. Followed later was William H. Bridgens with the Knickerbocker currency patriotic token that soon followed. By 1864, there were more than 25 million coins in circulation that had more than 7,000 varieties of different coins. The Lindenmuller tokens are the best known and most commonly struck, serving as store cards, and had more than 1 million of these 1 cent tokens struck and in circulation in 1863. The Third Avenue Railroad Company had willingly accepted a large quantity of the tokens in lieu of actual currency, but when they asked Lindenmuller to redeem them, he refused, which really led them with no legal recourse if he was going to refuse to redeem them back. Situations like this left companies with little to no recourse, which eventually forced the U.S. government to intervene with the Coinage Act during 1864. The Coinage Act, enacted June 8th, had Congress made minting and usage of non-government issued coins punishable with a fine up to $2,000 and up to 5 years in prison or both. So it really brung words. Really brung a lot of pressure on people not to continue to use their own coins, and also really put the U.S. government in a situation where they needed to make more coins to offset what they were instructing that needed to be stopped. Because, like we talked about, there was 25 million 25 million coins in circulation. So that means that the U.S. government had to make something resembling that to be able to ensure that commerce was still going to work. Some categories of the Civil War tokens are patriotic. So these displayed a political message as a tool to promote the Union. Normally coming from the Union side of the Civil War, the patriotic tokens followed 4 main but basic conventions. Depiction of major U.S. personalities. These are commonly paired with reverses that label not 1 cent. Well-known symbols of the Union. That could be a banner, that could be a flag, that could be crossed cannons. All of those are examples. Depiction of military hardware on one or both sides. One of the big ones that comes across is the ironclad ship, the USS Monitor. That shows up on a lot of different coins. Non-pictorial, and that's the 4th category. These usually have short phrases that demonstrate loyalty to the Unionist cause. So those are the 4 main and basic categories of patriotic Civil War tokens. So store cards. Store cards is another category of Civil War token. The store cards were advertisements, really, of privately owned businesses. And if the business could afford them, a die was made with the business name on it and the denomination of the coin on the opposite side. The merchants issued store cards frequently, and generally these merchants were dry good dealers, butchers, and grocers, things that had a lot of transaction back and forth. Store cards advertised from approximately 1,700 merchants in 22 states and covered more than 400 towns. So there's a lot of commerce, there's a lot of coins out there, and really it was a lot of advertisement that it was moving around at the time. So another category of a Civil War token is a sutler token. Prior to this, I have never heard of a sutler token, so I had no idea what this is. I had seen them, but I had not recognized that they were actually something different, and they actually had a specific category. So sutler tokens were sutlers. Sutlers were merchants that sold a wide variety of wares to soldiers from necessities to small luxuries. Sutlers issued simple tokens made from base metal or cardboard to soldiers who they had extended credit to. Sutlers accompanied various units and issued tokens of different denominations. They have very simple designs with text declaring the issuing sutler and the token's denomination, whether by unit or by a topical motif. Really, any number of interesting combinations could be made with these sutlers and their tokens. Because some of the dies that were used to strike a Civil War token were pressed into service producing sutler tokens, there really has a lot of connection, and it creates a close connection between the sutler and the Civil War tokens because they were effectively the same thing, a little bit different, but moreover that some of the dies that were used for the Civil War tokens were then used for sutler tokens. That's a direct connection. So numismatic dealer George Fold developed the rarity scale R1 to R10, with R1 being more than 5,000 pieces. Other things to look for in the materials for Civil War coins are the materials used for minting them, copper and bronze being the most common, but also included nickel, tin, German silver, white metal, and silver that were also materials used to make the Civil War tokens. And George Fold has a very large catalog of the Civil War tokens and uses that rarity scale as a standard. All right, just give me 1 second here. I'm going to take a drink of water. So, so we covered 5 more categories in Exonumia, and kind of the biggest thing for everybody to know is that this is just a very another small slice of Exonumia as a whole. It has many categories, and we will probably end up doing maybe 1 or even 2 more shows, although smaller, a little bit smaller shows, that cover some of these categories, because it really is a section of the numismatics, and is like it plays a lot into it. Like it's a section of numismatic because it is gonna have coins and coin collecting and tokens, but it's not just the regular standard coins. So there's a lot of history behind these things, and it's really interesting to find out the history on them. You good, Blues?
Yeah. Sorry, y'all. I fell ill.
It's all good. So I would like to we are going to wrap this up. That was the ones that we had set. So number 1, I want to thank everybody that came in to the live show. Again, if you guys are watching this afterwards, no worries. We go live every Monday unless something comes up. And I have videos that come out either Wednesday or Thursday each week on the U.S. commemorative series. So look forward to that. Thank everybody. Thank Blues for continuing to co-host this each week with me, because without his help, we wouldn't be able to do these as much as we do. So I appreciate everybody, and we'll catch you guys on the next one. Thanks for coming in.